Talk into the red ball like
Jack
this.
Lechner, yes.
Jack Lechner.
Yeah. How are you, Jack?
I am great. Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to bring somebody on from my personal life, too. You know?
Am I from your personal life?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we knew each other in a personal context before we knew each other in a professional context.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of started together because I think we met. You were working at Radical or freelancing
That's
at
right.
Radical?
And you were
meeting?
at Sony.
I was at Sony, and it was a very different time. And I was kind of like not happy in the music industry, and I didn't really know what the next steps were going to be, but I was kind of like exploring, and you took a meeting, which was very nice. But we shared a nanny, as I was telling Rob. That's kind of how...
Our wonderful nanny, Helen.
Yeah. Well,
And now my daughter is in senior year of high school, so which means that your kid must be just behind.
Well, he just started high school 2 days ago, right?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It's remarkable how quickly those years, 13 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
My kids just started kindergarten.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. My kids just started kindergarten yesterday. So
Well, that's significant.
got a ways to go, though.
That's the voice of Rob King. Rob, do you go Rob L. King, or how do you?
Just Rob King.
Rob King.
There's no L. There's
And
a
you're,
J.
there's a J. Excuse me. There's a Rob L. King out there somewhere, and I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Rob.
There's Robert L. King, who wrote The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Maybe that's who I was thinking of. And with the
no,
passing
he's
of-
Larry L. King. Never mind.
Son of a bitch. But we could mention, since that you referred to what was a Broadway musical, a very big, successful one, but it was also made into a film, unfortunately.
With the late Burt Reynolds.
With the late Burt Reynolds transition.
Larry L. King. I apologize, Larry, for getting your first name wrong.
If your name is King and it's preceded by an initial, we apologize to all. But we're here today, Jack and Rob, are professors. How do you...
We're professors, but nobody calls us that except first-year students.
By the second year, they've lost all the...
By about the second class, they've lost all respect for us, and they just call us by our first names.
Okay.
They don't talk to us at all.
Times have changed. I mean, it's like when I was young, doctors, even if they weren't your doctor, they wanted to be referred to as Dr. Lechner, Dr. King.
Since I don't even have an advanced degree, that would be a big mistake in my case.
I see. But it was Professor Cosby. It was Professor, like all this.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I think that when I had university education in England, everyone just referred to professors by their first name.
Really?
That was very commonplace. But
for students.
Yeah. But here, I feel that there seems to be some weird ambiguity about how... I don't know. It's true that how professors are meant to be addressed by students. I just sign off my emails to students just with my initials because I don't know how to present myself to them. Like,
I see.
As Professor King
or Rob.
Or as Rob or,
Mr. King. Because it's an awkward thing. If you're not going to... It's easier just to say, refer to me as professor because, then you don't have to waffle and wonder about that.
Right.
It's like...
But there's also something... There's something strange maybe about saying, "Oh, call me Rob," to someone who just really does not want to call me Rob.
That's right. Yeah, it's often their issue. They're
just
still...
leave it as arcade. You can make your mind up, like what you want to call me.
Yeah, I would imagine, having been a student, the difference between a first-year incoming undergraduate student and a second year is huge, because you're taking your first steps into adulthood in a sense. You're being treated like an adult for the first time, but you're still used to looking up to adults. Yeah. And so it's odd. It would be very awkward to call.
But we're also teaching graduate students, some of whom have had entire careers before they get to Columbia.
Right.
So
who themselves
it
are
would be
teachers.
strange for them to call us professor.
Who themselves might be teachers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or should be teachers.
Speaking of students and teaching, it's all one, because we're in the offices of Columbia. This is maybe my third time recording a segment here. I recorded... Oh, no, a second time. I was here to interview Ira Deutchman, who is why we're sitting together, one of the reasons. And I've had on a couple of other people from Columbia faculty.
You've had Annette Insdorf on your show.
And that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really instrumental, I think, in bringing me Paul Schrader, making that happen. That was great. I think so. I mean, she introduced me to him, and then he probably didn't remember me from that context. But I'd like to think she was instrumental. And then also just had on Ramin Barani on the show. On my
fantastic.
Yeah, he was terrific. 500th episode guest. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's been great.
You should have really had him on the 451st episode, though.
I should have had him on 1 through 451, if you ask me. Anyway, but Ira is, of course, a legend, and it's worthy of any tribute.
We should take that opportunity to segue and say that we are, in fact, Rob and I are producing NY Indie Guy, Ira Deutchman, and the Rise of Independent Film, which is a retrospective honoring the work of Ira Deutchman.
I thought this is really right up my alley. I'd love to help spread the word about it, if word needs to be spread. I don't know.
It always does.
Is this something that's going to the Columbia film community? Or is this also meant for...
This is open to the public, and we're really hoping that the public will show up. We're showing 17 films at the Lenfest Center for the Arts,
which is beautiful.
129th Street.
That's where I met
Brand new state-of-the-art building.
Right.
Beautiful screening room. So 17 films, 4 panels.
Wow.
There's a physical exhibit about Ira's history in independent film.
Ira, unfortunately, will not be available. He's out of town, but...
Oh, boy, will Ira be available.
Good.
I think he'll be there at every screening.
Yeah. Rob, what was your introduction to Ira? And also tell me a little bit about yourself, because this is our first time meeting.
Oh, sure. Well, a little bit about myself. I teach here at Columbia in the Film and Media Studies program, which is... so I'm not teaching MFA students. I don't teach filmmaking, directing, screenwriting. I teach film history, primarily American film history. And I've been here for 6 years now, started in 2012. My introduction...
And you had a child 5 years ago. Interesting how quickly you took care of that, having an American child.
It was that's...
Sorry about that.
That's yes, that is true. That happened. That was quick, but but to my American wife. So
okay.
This was already very fully above board and everything
there. All right.
But it's how did I get to know I got to know Ira. I mean, obviously one knows him through his reputation and his role in the independent scene in the 70s through the 90s and beyond, but I got to know him because I share an office with him, as I also share an office with Ramin. So that was really how I got to know both of them. Yeah.
How many classes do you teach?
I normally teach a couple of classes a semester. Primarily I teach intro to film and media studies, and I teach popular American genres, so that would be comedy. I often teach exploitation. I teach a couple of new media classes that I'm slowly moving into as well.
Okay. And your students are mostly undergraduate, or is this kind of split?
Well, we have an undergraduate and a master's degree within the Film and Media Studies program. I'm the director of undergraduate studies, so I'm mainly teaching undergraduate students, but we have a lot of excellent graduate students in our program also.
And Jack, you're teaching.
I teach the grad students, and I teach the MFA students, the filmmaking students,
right.
And specifically, I'm a professor in the producing concentration of the Graduate Film School.
Okay, and and you've produced quite a few films.
And I also produce film and television,
and theater,
and theater occasionally. But that's actually how I know Ira from the professional world, long before I ever came to Columbia, before I even stared teaching.
What was the beginning?
I guess I met Ira when I was at Channel 4 in London, and was involved in a couple of movies that Ira distributed at Fine Line Features.
Like a Stephen Frears film or something?
No, actually one was Ken Loach's Raining Stones, which Ira actually had to put subtitles on, even though the film was made in English.
Yeah.
Because the accents were so thick.
Wait, did he have to put subtitles on it for its British release?
No, for its American release.
For its American release.
No, in Britain they could actually understand it. It's an amazing film, and I recommend people see it even with the subtitles. And then Ira picked up and distributed Waterland, which we helped to finance at Channel 4, and which is indeed going to be in this series at Lenfest with Stephen Gyllenhaal, the filmmaker present.
Oh, any relation to the other Gyllenhaals?
Q&A. Yeah, he's the father of Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal, who, in fact, made her film debut in Waterland.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you brought up the series. Now that we've gotten to know you guys, you brought up the retrospective. What are the dates? And we know it's at Lenfest. I think. Did you already mention the dates when you said where it was?
It's
okay.
It's the 14th through the 23rd of September.
What is this? Well, we'll make every effort to get it prior to the 14th.
Yeah, it's the 14th through the 23rd of September 2018. And we have on weekday nights we have a couple of screenings, and then on the weekends we've got all-day screenings.
And the panels. Yep.
And again, often attended by the filmmaker or special guests who had something to do with the film.
I'll definitely make a point of coming up for some of this stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, he was such a significant person in the story of American independent film.
Honestly, I didn't even have an idea of just how large Ira's footprint is until we started working on this series, and I realized just how many movies I loved.
He's touched.
That Ira touched at one point or another, either distributed them, produced them, was a consultant on the marketing for them.
Yeah.
The earliest film we're showing in the series is A Woman Under the Influence, John Cassavetes' remarkable film, which was the first film Ira ever worked on. He was he organized the Midwestern premiere while he was still a student.
Right. He talks about that on the segment he guested on. It's incredible. Just bizarre, right? He could just call up. I think he just called him up or something. I might be remembering a story Jeff Lipsky told me.
Yeah, I think wasn't that the case that Jeff Lipsky was brought on to help promote the film, and that involved some outreach to universities. And
yes, that's right.
That's I guess where Ira latches onto the film. And I completely agree with Jack that I didn't realize the extent of his involvement in the evolving independent film scene until we were putting together all of these titles, and it was really an eye opener. And I think one of the interesting things about the retrospective is that it seems to me that it's quite unusual to have a retrospective that is that is devoted to a distributor or a producer or a marketer. We're familiar with the idea of a retrospective that is devoted to the work of a single filmmaker, right? Exactly. Where we get to kind of create.
Or genre.
Exactly. But to have a retrospective that's focused on an individual who's been involved in producing, distributing, and marketing films, what you're seeing is not, as would be the case in these other kinds of festivals, the development of a creative thumbprint or something like that, as much as you're really seeing like the development of a sector of the industry. Like you're seeing the changing ecology of the independent film scene from like that Cassavetes moment, that we're all familiar with, through to really the very complex status of independence as it exists today in relation to the major studios. So it's kind of a fascinating walk through an important part of film history, I think.
Could you do this retrospective anywhere other than New York City? You couldn't, because there's at least that many film lovers and film obsessives that would know. If they don't know Ira, they would certainly say, "Oh, that guy, who is this guy? Let me go check out." Could you really do that anywhere?
You could maybe do it in Los Angeles, but certainly it helps to do it in New York City.
There aren't too many producers, obviously. That's why I can't think of them.
And again, there aren't too many people who have had the scope
and
reach of Ira in his career. We're doing, in these 17 films, we have 3 themed programs. We've got a day of queer cinema with really a remarkable bunch of films. Tom Kalin's film Swoon, and Tom, of course, teaches here at Columbia. We've got the late Bill Sherwood's Parting Glances,
Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi, the film that put him on the map. We've got a restored print that no one in America has seen of Outrageous, which is kind of a neglected gem by Richard Benner, who tragically died of AIDS very young. But this was really one of the first gay-themed independent films to cross over to the mainstream. 1977, about a drag queen played by Craig Russell, who was a noted drag queen of the day. And we're also showing 54, the director's cut by Mark Christopher, Columbia alum, and he'll be here. And that's I'll actually be on the panel for that because Ira produced the movie, and I was the Miramax executive charged with developing the movie, and that's a movie where almost everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And in this case, what could go wrong was Harvey Weinstein.
Jack, I think we're going to have you back on the podcast very soon to kind of follow up on some of this.
You could do a whole podcast just on the 54 story, and honestly, you could do a lot worse and have Mark Christopher on to talk about it.
Sure.
Because it was, I always, the analogy, I may use this again in the panel, but went years later when I worked on The Fog of War and spent a lot of time with Robert McNamara and listening to the tapes of McNamara and Johnson in the White House as the Vietnam War was going wrong. I kept thinking, this is really familiar, this dynamic. What was it? And I realized this was like working on 54. If 54 were at war, there would be many, many thousands of people dead.
Can you just make one kind of broad stroke, giving an idea of what you're getting at when everything went wrong?
I teach this in my class now because it's sort of a classic case study problem for producers, which is the filmmaker, Mark Christopher, writer-director, knew what movie he wanted to make.
Yeah.
And he set out to make that movie. This happened not to be the movie that Harvey Weinstein, the financier of the movie, wanted to make.
Sure, right.
And only one vision was going to win out, and it wasn't going to be the filmmakers.
No, this guy with the money.
And as a result, the movie that Harvey released, which was loathed by critics and audiences alike, is rewritten, reshot, re-edited, and bears only a cursory resemblance to Mark's original vision. So Ira and Mark actually painstakingly put the film back together, and that's the version that we're showing.
The director's cut. Yeah, it's amazing.
You mentioned, Jack, that there were three theme days, although we got sidetracked into a lot of. Okay, right.
Hey, listen, I got an audience. I gotta get the.
No.
The
it's
tawdry tabloid stuff out there too. It's important to keep people hooked. Just kidding.
But we're also going to have a day devoted to documentaries, and a day devoted to female filmmakers as well. So it provides an interesting sense, like when of how the independent sector functioned during a period when Ira was involved in it. As a venue for filmmakers who otherwise weren't really getting opportunities to make films within the major studios. I mean, the idea of independent cinema in the 1980s and 1990s of it as being a cinema of outsiders is often voiced, but you get to see that kind of in action over the course of the retrospective, I think.
So has Ira always had this agenda of telling the stories or wanting to participate in the telling of stories about the outsider? Because, I mean, here's a white straight guy, right? Yeah. By the way, you're marketing it. We got to get those guys. Those are usually the film geeks, or a good portion of them anyway. But do you feel like that, all kidding aside, do you feel like that was kind of Ira's...
I think that's intention? Always been part of the unique selling proposition of independent film. Yeah. Is if independent film is actually going to compete in the marketplace and in the marketplace of ideas, it has to provide something that Hollywood mainstream film is not providing. And for a long time that was, and even now, that's one of the main things it can provide is stories about people that you don't see in Hollywood films, told by people who aren't making Hollywood films, and Ira embraced that from the beginning.
Yeah, and we're talking post 70s essentially.
Yeah,
because
we're
that's where
really
the gap
talking from
really-
mid 70s,
Yeah.
right up to the present.
Where we're which is why I kind of also I'm so glad when I do talk to somebody like Ira or Amos Poe, because I feel like with the with Jaws and Star Wars and Raiders and all those films that were coming out at that period, or after the heyday of
After the Easy Riders, Raging Bulls era.
exactly, yeah. Then these guys really kind of came in, or a lot of guys like that. Mostly men, still mostly men. There were women.
And again, it was really striking when we looked at all the films to realize how much from the beginning Ira had really been a supporter
Right.
of female filmmakers, gay filmmakers, minority filmmakers,
Right.
And just really how many movies we had to choose from to illustrate all these points.
Yeah.
In the Visionary Women Day, we're showing Gillian Armstrong's wonderful Starstruck, which I don't think a lot of people have seen. As
I don't
Ira
think
said,
I've
it was not a hit here.
Right.
But
did it get much distribution here?
it's a
'Cause I
punk
remember-
rock musical. Ira distributed it at Cinecom, and it's a delightful film.
Yeah. I gotta go see
And really not like anything else Gillian Armstrong ever made.
Yeah. Wow.
We're showing Chilly Scenes of Winter, Joan Micklin Silver's great film,
Yeah.
which Ira and his team at United Artists Classics basically rediscovered after UA proper had botched the release,
Right.
With a new title and a new ending.
Yeah.
And,
Stars.
that we're not only are we showing the film, but we have a panel with Joan Micklin Silver, the filmmaker, the three producers / actors, Amy Robinson, Mark Metcalf, and Griffin Dunn, and the actors Mary Beth Hurt and Peter Riegert. So that's going to be one for the books.
I got to come to that one. Well, I've been wanting to get Joan Micklin Silver on anyway, but
This might be your chance,
right?
actually.
Yeah. And sadly, speaking of Chilly Scenes of Winter,
John Hurd, unfortunately,
we
is not
lost
with us,
John Hurd,
who's also in Waterland.
that was kind of not kind of, that was tragic.
Yeah.
And it was right around the time, I think that he had just died days before I met with Ira, actually.
The 15th. It is Saturday the 15th at 6 p.m. is when we're showing Chilly Scenes of Winter.
Saturday the 16th. I'm not sure I'm not going to make it.
Saturday the 15th.
The 15th. And then what time is the panel?
So the film will be at 6 p.m. and the panel will be at about 7:30.
And that whole day is the Visionary Women Day as well.
Makes sense.
And on the documentary day, which Rob mentioned, we're also showing Harlan County, USA, Barbara Koppel's classic film. We're showing a delightful one-off called This Old Cub, which is about the Chicago Cubs player Ron Santo and his amazing personal story. And this is really very personal for Ira, because Ira Deutchman is...
Oh, right.
Right up there as one of the
right.
world's biggest Chicago Cubs fans.
He's a big baseball
He has actually, Ira has attended every Chicago Cubs postseason game at Wrigley Field since he was born. And 2 years ago, when Ira was on sabbatical, he actually managed to attend every postseason game, period.
Sounds like is he alone when he's doing that? No,
he has a very tolerant
he's around
wife.
several thousand friends.
Right. I think, am I right that he grew a beard during that time? During that.
Didn't shave until they won the World Series.
Right.
Again, the dates.
The documentary day is Sunday, September 23rd, and that day will cap off with we have a wonderful panel on the preservation crisis in indie film, which really is, I think, one of the most interesting panels we've got, because these are movies that were made in all kinds of formats by all kinds of people, many of which were just sort of shoved in basements somewhere, and now they're in all kinds of shape.
Sure.
And so we have a number of people on the panel who are actively working to preserve them, like Sandra Schulberg, who teaches with us at Columbia, who's the founder of an organization called Indie Collect.
Sure.
The panel's moderated by Dennis Doros from Milestone, who has spearheaded the restoration and re-release of all the Shirley Clark movies, for instance.
Jason
Yeah, Portrait of Jason,
Portrait of Jason,
exactly,
right. Yeah.
in the Cole world. We've got Shola Lynch and Elena Rossi Snook from the New York Public Library. So it's really...
this is a very ambitious retrospective considering.
Yeah. And then that day is capped with The Last Waltz, Martin Scorsese's amazing music documentary. And we are hoping
Starring
that there
Neil
will
Diamond.
Neil Diamond and others. Yes,
And others.
exactly.
It's Ed Al.
And we're hoping that there will be a very special guest for that one, which I cannot confirm or deny yet.
Okay. Off mic. Okay, so again, the dates for the entire from the retrospective overall
It would be the 14th through the 23rd.
Again, it will all take place at the
Lenfest
Center
for the Arts.
For
Which
the arts,
actually
which is
is, it's kind of a new venue that it's at 129th Street.
129th Street, between Broadway and
just off
Riverside
Broadway.
Drive.
Yeah, between the two. It's Lenfest is a new venue that just opened almost exactly a year ago, in fact. And since its opening, we've been taking baby steps towards establishing it as a space for retrospective screenings. We tried it. An initial step in that direction was taken earlier this year in March, with the first in a projected 10-year series of film noir retrospectives.
That's where I ran into Paul Schrader.
Oh, you were at that?
I went to the talk, that he did there. Yeah,
okay, great. Yeah, and so this, I guess the Ira Deutchman retrospective will...
Maybe I met you there. Were you there?
I was.
Did you walk in and say hello?
I did walk
we
in.
shook. I think we shook hands.
Yeah,
no, I think we did. I was sitting with Annette. I think we're
sitting
behind
at
her.
the front, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I vaguely remember. We met by the buffet, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, good.
I think it's one of those things where, because we're friends on Facebook,
okay.
right? But I've never met you,
right?
But then
maybe after that, we became friends.
No, it was before that, and then at the Paul Schrader thing, at the Paul Schrader talk, I thought, oh, is this that guy that?
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm friends with.
It's funny how now the synapses.
No, I don't actually know.
I know, it's very bizarre, but.
But yeah, so that was in March, and then this, so the Ira Deutchman thing is actually going to be the biggest retrospective that we've attempted so far.
And where can people find the schedule if they want to just?
Well, if you type in NY Indie Guy in your browser search bar, it'll be just NYINDIEGUY. That it'll either take you to Ira Deutchman's Twitter feed. Or it'll take you to the homepage for the retrospective.
Right, and if you're listening and you're not able to make it, I still recommend you follow Ira's Twitter feed, so you can at least get.
Well, although I suspect that Ira's Twitter feed will itself be promoting the website for NY Indie Guy over the next few days.
I should also point out, Ira is doing a series of blog posts on his blog, NY Indie Guy, about the films in the series, telling the story behind each one and anecdotes about his involvement with them.
Yeah, if he wasn't,
they're really delightful.
This is exciting. I'm so glad we were able to pull this off, guys. And
thank you, Adam.
And we can definitely follow up, and if there are subsequent things you want to talk about.
There's one other that I really want to mention, which is we're showing The Brother from Another Planet.
I was going to bring that up.
John Sayles' amazing film. John Sayles and Maggie Renzi will be talking about it afterward, moderated by our Columbia colleague Jamal Joseph, who usually sits at this chair that we're looking at right now. I was telling Jamal last night that movie really means something to me because it was the first movie that my wife and I saw as a couple, and that was 31 years ago. And Jamal said, honestly, I got you beat. I saw it in Leavenworth Federal Prison. And he'll tell the story of that
Jamal.
At the...
Okay, I know that. I thought I knew that name. Now I remember the context. Yes,
Jamal has had an amazing life, and he'll tell that story at the event.
Okay, well, I'd love to get him on too. I should just set up an office at the Columbia. I think
really should.
By the way, just should mention, for personal reasons, John Sayles, guest for episode 300. Barbara Koppel, guest for episode number 200.
All right.
So we're kind of in the same mind space here. It's something, Jeff. I guess you could say Ira's touched the podcast many times over as well.
Yes,
I could do a retrospective of my episodes based on people that he's touched their professional careers, and so check out New York Indie Guy for more details, and come to as much as you can over the course of that week or so, as I will.
We'll be there.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.